No one will ever replace my husband. No. But I do see some similarities of my husband in JD and Vice President JD Vance. I do. And that's why I'm so blessed to be able to introduce him tonight. Putting your hands in a man's hair when you hug him, that is a very intimate thing to do. And if you're wondering why I'm talking about that, it's because we're talking about the hug heard around the world. And everyone was trying to comfort JD Vance by showing this image where he had his hand on his hip. But if you watch the video, this is not what it looks like. His hand brushed, like, he's not the problem here.
What if the path to the White House didn't begin in Washington, but with a single, dangerous hug that changed everything? In a world where power is choreographed, where every smile is strategic and every silence hides a deal, one woman's rise has left the internet questioning everything they thought they knew about love, loss, and ambition. Her name is Erika Kirk, and ever since that moment on stage beside JD Vance, the air around America's most powerful circles has never been the same. A grieving widow turned public figure, a rising senator with a golden future, and a wife suddenly pushed into the shadows. The pieces seem innocent until you put them together. Then the picture turns chilling. Because what if behind that comforting embrace was a plan years in the making? Tonight, we peel back the curtain on a story that blurs the line between faith, fame, and political destiny, a story that could reshape the road to 2028. And if you believe power is always planned, not accidental, then you'll want to stay to the very end of this video, because what we found might just change how you see the people running your country. Before we begin, make sure to like, subscribe, and turn on the bell. Because on Inside the Billionaires, every story we tell isn't just about wealth, it's about the forces quietly steering the future. They say every powerful man stands on the shoulders of someone who once believed in him. For JD Vance, that person was Usha, the woman who helped him rise from small-town obscurity to the US Senate. Brilliant, composed, and raised in a tight-knit immigrant family, she was the calm behind his ambition, the one who kept him grounded when politics demanded performance. But lately, the warmth in their story has started to fade. During recent interviews, JD began speaking about his marriage not with affection, but with distance, emphasizing their religious differences as if they were political talking points. "My wife didn't grow up Christian," he said before thousands of supporters, his tone somewhere between confession and campaign speech. To most, it sounded like an ordinary comment, but to those who know how image shapes destiny, it felt like a carefully placed seed, a narrative shift that subtly recasts Usha from equal partner to spiritual outsider. For years, Usha proudly balanced both worlds, the Indian heritage that shaped her values and the faith that her husband hoped she'd embrace. Yet now, the same qualities that once made her unique are being repackaged as inconvenient differences. It's as if her identity is being rewritten in real time, transformed from strength into liability. Behind closed doors, friends describe her as quiet, exhausted, and uncertain of where she fits in the story she helped build. And while JD moves through rallies surrounded by cameras, Usha's presence has almost disappeared from the spotlight, no longer the smiling partner beside him, but a shadow just outside the frame. Maybe it's coincidence, maybe it's strategy, because in politics, nothing fades without purpose. Somewhere between faith and ambition, the woman who once inspired his rise may now be standing on the edge of his reinvention, and the world is beginning to wonder who or what will replace her next. It happened in just 8 seconds, but those 8 seconds changed everything. The stage lights in Oxford burned bright, the crowd cheered, and Erika Kirk stepped forward, her voice trembling just enough to sound sincere. Standing beside her was JD Vance, the senator whose name was already being whispered as the next one. Then came the line that froze the room. "I see some of my husband in JD and in Vice President JD Vance." The audience applauded, not realizing they had just witnessed the start of something far more calculated than a tribute. As JD approached, Erika reached for him, one arm around his shoulders, his hand slipping to her waist. The cameras clicked, the flash reflected off her black leather pants, and the moment spread like wildfire. To the untrained eye, it was a comforting hug between two grieving allies. But to the internet, it was a soft launch. The kind of subtle reveal that influencers use before announcing a new relationship. Every frame was studied, slowed, dissected. Her smile lingered too long. His expression softened too easily. The body language told a story their words couldn't. Within hours, clips flooded social media. Some viewers called it a widow's healing moment. Others saw it as the first act of a perfectly staged rebranding, a new power duo being introduced under the guise of shared grief. Even her phrasing, "No one will replace my husband, but," sounded like a script written to test public sympathy. Since that night, Erika hasn't stopped appearing beside JD at public events. Her tone, her posture, even her wardrobe seem carefully chosen to project partnership, not pity. The woman once defined by tragedy is now being reintroduced as a figure of strength, and possibly of ambition. Because in politics, there's no such thing as an accidental moment on stage. Every touch, every word, every smile is choreography. And that 8-second embrace? It may have been the quiet signal that the next chapter of America's power story had just begun, with Erika Kirk stepping right into the spotlight. Behind every perfect photo lies the story no one was meant to see. And for Usha Vance, that story began the moment she started noticing patterns. Flight dates that didn't match official schedules. Messages sent late at night. Photos from events where her husband appeared just a little too comfortable beside Erika Kirk. At first, Usha told herself it was stress, paranoia, the natural chaos of political life. But when the same names, locations, and dates kept reappearing, denial became impossible. According to people close to her, Usha confided in a few trusted friends. Her words were quiet but devastating. "I don't know how I'm going to get through this." For years, she had been the woman behind the senator, the one who kept the family grounded, who raised their children while JD's career soared. Yet now, every headline, every interview, every photo seemed to orbit around someone else. Erika wasn't just the grieving widow anymore, she was becoming part of JD's narrative, the polished, photogenic companion who fit perfectly into the world of conservative politics and public faith. In private, Usha began to piece together what the rest of the world was starting to suspect. The carefully timed appearances, the coincidental seating arrangements, the way Erika's statements always seemed to align with JD's campaign messaging. It wasn't random, it was rhythm, a quiet synchronization between two people who no longer needed words to communicate. Friends say Usha's biggest fear wasn't just losing her marriage, it was being erased from the story entirely. The elegant photographs, the media coverage, the political framing, all rewriting history in real time, as if the role of the supportive wife was being reassigned before her eyes. And while Erika's star kept rising, Usha's light dimmed with each new headline. Somewhere between grief and ambition, one woman was gaining everything the other was losing. Because in the world of politics, there's no such thing as coincidence, only timing. And Usha was starting to realize that the timing, this time, was no longer hers. Every great story of power begins with a turning point, a moment so tragic, it rewrites the lives of everyone connected to it. For this one, that moment was the death of Charlie Kirk. The news broke like lightning, shocking, confusing, and painfully public. Charlie, the outspoken leader of Turning Point USA, was gone. Tributes poured in, tears filled screens, and sympathy followed his young widow, Erika Kirk, wherever she went. But, as the days turned into weeks, the tone of her appearances began to shift. The grief looked different, rehearsed, almost radiant. She wasn't retreating from the spotlight, she was mastering it. Within a month of the tragedy, Erika returned to stages, cameras, and podcasts with renewed poise. Her voice was calm, her makeup flawless, and her message perfectly aligned with the growing political movement that surrounded her. Then came JD Vance, already a key player in the Trump circle, already being groomed as a face of America's next conservative era. When the two appeared together, the energy changed. It wasn't sorrow anymore, it was symbolism. Erika's speeches began to echo JD's ideals, her words forming bridges between faith, family, and the future of America. Some saw it as natural collaboration, others called it orchestration, because the timeline was too neat to ignore. Charlie's passing in September, the first public embrace in Oxford weeks later, the synchronized media appearances that followed. Each event stacking like chess moves towards something bigger. Online forums buzzed with theories. Was Erika simply healing in public? Or had her tragedy become the launchpad for something far more deliberate, a rebirth into political royalty? To her admirers, she was a story of resilience. To skeptics, she was the architect of her own ascension. But either way, Charlie's death had opened a door that could never be closed again, one leading directly toward the highest seat of power in America. And if every rise demands a sacrifice, the question haunting everyone now is, whose story had to end for hers to begin? In politics, no vacuum stays empty for long. And as America's attention drifted from tragedy to election season, new alliances began to take shape in the shadows. That's when whispers about the 2028 plan started spreading, a theory that linked the future of the White House to a partnership no one saw coming: JD Vance and Erika Kirk. After Donald Trump's team publicly hinted that JD was next in line, the internet connected the dots faster than any campaign strategist could contain. Lara Trump herself said it on air, that once Trump's term ended, JD Vance would carry the torch for 8 more years. That single line was all it took to spark a digital firestorm. Because if JD was the heir to the movement, who would stand beside him? Who would become the symbol of the next conservative era? And that's where Erika stepped in, with perfect timing. She wasn't just a widow anymore, she was a media-savvy, faith-driven figure whose every public appearance now carried the grace and moral appeal the base adored. Her image, a woman who'd suffered loss but found purpose, was the emotional balance to JD's stoic, intellectual presence. Together, they looked like a brand. Conspiracy channels began calling her the Queen in the Shadows. They claimed the bond between JD and Erika wasn't just emotional, it was strategic. Every handshake, every shared stage, every coordinated talking point looked like rehearsal for a national campaign. Behind closed doors, donors allegedly started showing interest. Faith groups began echoing her phrases. The alignment was too smooth to ignore. Maybe it's all coincidence. Or maybe the 2028 story is already being written, and Erika's role in it is no accident. Because if politics is theater, then she's the actress who learned how to turn tragedy into transformation. And just as quietly as she stepped into the spotlight, she may be preparing to rewrite the script of who holds America's power next. Not as the candidate, but as the woman behind the man who wins. Every great power move needs a perfect justification, something that looks righteous even when it's ruthlessly strategic. And in JD Vance's world, that justification might already have a name: the Pauline privilege. It's an ancient rule tucked deep inside Catholic doctrine, dating back to the writings of the Apostle Paul. In simple terms, it allows a believer to dissolve a marriage with a non-believer if that union wasn't blessed as a true sacrament. In other words, if one spouse never accepted the faith, the church can quietly declare the marriage null. A clean slate, a divine loophole. And here's where things get complicated. JD Vance is Catholic. His wife, Usha, was raised Hindu. Their wedding, though beautiful and deeply personal, wasn't a traditional Catholic sacrament. For years, it never mattered. Their differences were part of their story. But lately, with JD speaking more often about faith and leadership, some observers think he's planting the foundation for something far more deliberate. Imagine the optics. A faithful senator portrayed as a man torn between love and belief, publicly struggling with a spiritual divide. Then imagine the redemption arc, a new marriage to a devout Christian woman whose story of loss and faith fits perfectly into the movement's moral narrative. It would turn controversy into symbolism, politics into parable. Of course, there's no proof that JD has considered invoking such a privilege, but in a political climate where image is everything, the timing feels too neat to ignore. A religious clause that once existed for ancient converts could suddenly become the golden key to a modern political transformation. Because in the corridors of power, faith is more than belief, it's branding. And if the Pauline privilege ever leaves the pages of scripture and steps onto the campaign trail, it could become the most quietly powerful move of JD Vance's entire career, the moment that sanctifies ambition itself. Silence can be louder than any headline, and lately, Usha Vance's silence has become deafening. Once the steady voice behind JD's rise, she now exists almost like a rumor, seen rarely, heard never, and spoken about only in whispers. Supporters used to admire her poise, her intelligence, her quiet strength. But as JD's public life became entwined with Erika's story, Usha's absence started to feel less like privacy and more like a warning. Across social media, speculation has turned dark. Some say she's simply protecting her family. Others insist she's being pushed out of the narrative, erased from photos, left out of interviews, quietly edited from the public image of the man she once defined. One post went viral, reading, "Watch the headlines. When a woman disappears from her husband's campaign, something bigger is happening behind the scenes." Those who've known Usha describe her as calm but deeply perceptive, a woman who sees patterns others miss, and lately, she's seen too much. The sudden shift in JD's tone, the growing presence of Erika, the subtle distancing that feels less emotional and more strategic. To outsiders, it might just be politics, but to Usha, it's personal, a quiet unraveling of everything she helped build. People close to the family say she's grown cautious, even fearful. Her friends describe her messages as fragmented, reflective, filled with questions she never used to ask. When did I stop being part of his story? In a world where power rewrites truth, Usha may be watching her own erasure in real time, not from scandal, but from substitution. The wife who once stood beside the rising star now stands in the shadow of a narrative bigger than herself. And as the story of JD and Erika grows louder, one haunting thought lingers behind every frame and headline: that the greatest threat to Usha Vance might not be losing her marriage, but losing her voice in a story she helped create. In the end, every story about power has two versions, the one they tell the cameras and the one whispered behind closed doors. The tale of JD Vance, Usha, and Erika Kirk may be wrapped in politics, faith, and destiny. But at its core, it's about something far older: how ambition can quietly consume the people closest to it. If the rumors are true, Erika has turned tragedy into opportunity, JD has turned belief into strategy, and Usha has turned pain into silence. But perhaps the truth is even more unsettling, that in a world built on image and influence, none of them can escape the machine they helped create. Every word, every headline, every moment is part of a larger script, one that blurs morality with marketing and faith with power. Maybe Erika isn't a villain. Maybe JD isn't a mastermind. Maybe they're just reflections of a system that rewards control, not compassion, where emotion becomes performance and loss becomes leverage. What's undeniable is how quickly public sympathy transforms into political capital, and how effortlessly a private life can become a public weapon. So, as the cameras keep rolling and the internet keeps guessing, one truth remains: the quietest players often hold the most dangerous cards. In the theater of power, it's not the speech that matters, it's the silence after it. If you believe that power always comes with a price, this story is far from over, because somewhere, in the gap between loyalty and ambition, America's next chapter may already be unfolding, not in campaign offices or rallies, but in the private rooms where strategy wears the mask of faith. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications. Because on Inside the Billionaires, the real stories aren't about who wins. They're about what's lost along the way.